Singapore announces 908 new COVID-19 infections and expects the number to be high in the next few days.
A grim milestone for Victoria. The Australian state records its highest number of daily COVID-19 deaths since the pandemic began.
Get ready for a roar of unity. Every Singaporean will be able to see and hear these fighter jets from their homes on National Day.
Good evening, it's midweek Wednesday. You're watching The Big Story, coming to you live from the Straits Times newsroom. I'm Haryanto Diman.
And I'm Olivia Quay. You can subscribe to the Straits Times channel so you never miss a single episode.
Now, 908 new COVID-19 cases were confirmed today. The Health Ministry said the majority are dormitory residents who were tested during their isolation or quarantine period, even though they are asymptomatic.
The patients are among the final batch of workers being cleared, and they come from dormitories with a relatively high prevalence of COVID-19. So MOH expects the daily case counts to be high in the coming days before tapering down as more dorms are cleared of the virus.
The multi-ministry task force remains on track to clear all dorms by this Friday, August 7th, except for a few standalone blocks that serve as quarantine facilities.
4 community cases were reported today as well, comprising 3 Singaporeans or permanent residents and a work pass holder. There were also 4 imported cases, and more details will be shared later tonight.
COVID-19 has taken its toll on Singapore's economy. Retail sales dropped 27.8% in June compared to the same month last year.
But it is an improvement on the previous month when sales fell 52%, the biggest year-on-year decline on record. Overall, sales have been sliding for 17 straight months year-on-year.
The latest figures reflect the easing of COVID-19 restrictions as Singapore emerged from the 8-week circuit breaker. June saw the gradual reopening of the economy, with many physical stores resuming operations and restaurants offering dining-in options again.
Supermarkets and convenience stores all reported higher sales, as well as computer and telecommunications retailers due to demand from people working from home. All other categories like department stores and petrol stations recorded declines though.
We're now joined by Anders Peter Yul Sahlberg, co-founder and chief executive of retail group Norbreeze, which markets luxury brands. Hi Anders, welcome. Now Anders, do these latest figures bode well for retail sales moving forward? Would you say the worst is over?
Well, I would say yes, we can certainly expect the worst to be over unless that we have a second wave. But I believe that Singapore is well prepared for that as well. So at this point in time, yes, I would say the worst is over. And you can also see the improvement in the numbers from June to July, and also what we see now in August.
Right. Well, one of the hardest hit industries is luxury brands. So Anders, how has your businesses or how have your businesses fared in the past few months?
Well, in May, we were on a complete lockdown, or the stores were closed. The physical stores was closed like everybody else in Singapore. So May was not a good month for retail, that's for sure. But the silver lining can also be said for that e-commerce is certainly on the rise in the past few months. June improved after when phase 2 started. July is actually for us certainly an improvement, and August is a further improvement. And this is a pattern that we also saw in China in the recovery phase from the peak of the COVID until the early recovery or the early states after the peak. And it's improving month on month, week on week. But we still are short of the traffic in the malls. But certainly the conversion is going up at the same time. So we see a couple of positive trends, but it is a challenging time for retail.
Anders, that said, what's your outlook then for retail sales in the coming months? Do you see consumer demand, say, return to the pre-pandemic period?
We do not expect the consumer demand to return to the pre-pandemic anytime soon. We still don't have the tourists coming in to Singapore, and that will also affect the retail sales. And it is still advised to stay at home and only go out if absolutely necessary. But we see the conversion going up, the traffic that is actually making their way into the malls, they are potential buyers. So while the traffic is dropping, we see the conversion increasing on a also very high percentage increase, even doubling compared to what it was a year ago. So I would say pre-pandemic retail sales, we have to look probably into late this year or early next year. But e-commerce is taking over. Some of the sales is not taking over or covering for the drop in the physical retail for us. But we saw in June a 400% increase over last year, and we see a doubling also in July, and we see the same pattern going into August.
Right. Definitely, we wish you all the best, Anders, and thank you so much for coming onto the show to speak with us. We were speaking to co-founder and CEO of retail group Norbris, Anders Peter Yul Sahlberg. Also in the local headlines, criminal defense lawyer Charles Yeo has been appointed Reform Party chairman as part of its renewal post-GE 2020. Mr. Yeo replaces Andy Chu and became somewhat of a household name during the election campaign after clips of him delivering a Mandarin speech during the constituency political broadcast went viral. RP also announced that oil and gas company director Mahabub Bacha is the new party treasurer.
4 people who were among those at the unlawful public gathering at Bio Crescent on June 28th were each fined $4,000. All 4 pleaded guilty earlier today to an offence under the COVID-19 Temporary Measures Act. A second charge under the same act and 1 charge under the Liquor Controlled Supply and Consumption Act were also considered during sentencing. 6 other Singaporeans who were allegedly part of the gathering as well face similar charges.
A freelance fitness trainer accused of groping a female client while she was working out at the Dhoby Ghaut gym has been barred from the gym. He was captured on video repeatedly touching the woman's buttocks while she worked out with weights. When the newspaper contacted the trainer yesterday, he declined to comment on the allegations made against him.
Australia's Victoria state reported a record rise in new cases and deaths today, 725 new cases and 15 deaths in the past 24 hours. On top of a 6-week night curfew in Melbourne, large parts of the city's retail and manufacturing sectors will be shut down.
Construction firms must also radically reduce the number of works on site, while production at mid-works statewide will be cut by a third. Essential services like banks, supermarkets, pharmacies and petrol stations will remain open.
Our Australia correspondent Jonathan Pearlman joins us from Sydney to tell us more. Jonathan, how did Victoria get into this situation in the first place compared to where you're at, New South Wales, which is of course Australia's most populous state, which recorded just 12 new cases yesterday?
Yes, so Victoria had all but wiped out their coronavirus outbreak, but it came back around June after failures in the hotel quarantine system. Some security guards at hotels were not protecting themselves properly. They caught the virus and then spread it. Subsequently, the government introduced a lockdown, and firstly, people were not completely adhering to the lockdown rules. So people were going to work when they were sick. Particularly, this involved casual workers who were scared of losing their job or missing out on money. So there were holes in the system, including in the aged care system and in the casual workforce. And as a result of that, people were not obeying the rules properly. And now we have a situation where the Victorian numbers are far in excess of what they were the first time round in March.
Yeah.
Not only are major industries in Melbourne shut, 500 military personnel will be deployed to enforce the isolation orders. Plus, there are fines of nearly 5,000 Australian dollars for anyone breaching these orders. How are Victorians taking to these tighter measures, Jonathan?
I think people are accepting them, but there's a level of depression, there's a level of anxiety, and there's a level of shock. I think going into it a second time round, going into a stricter lockdown a second time round is difficult for a lot of people, having felt that they were over it the first time. There's a level of shock at looking at some of the busiest streets in Melbourne. This is Australia's second largest city. It's a global city. And these are some of the busiest streets in Melbourne that are just completely empty during these nighttime curfews. So it's a big change for the city. It's something that the city hasn't experienced before. But I think now there's a general acceptance that there's no other way to avoid further outbreak except to comply with these measures.
Well, Jonathan, in light of what's happening in Victoria, how is the rest of the country reacting in order to avoid outbreaks in other states?
Yes, so other states have really begun shutting their borders. Some had already shut them, but states like New South Wales, the most populous state, which includes the city of Sydney, are now requiring all Victorians to undergo quarantine for 14 days, or anyone coming from Victoria will need to undergo quarantine. I mean, that's a really significant development that's occurred today. You know, Sydney and Melbourne are really the two biggest cities and comprise a large part of the Australian population. Before this pandemic, it was one of the busiest flight routes in the world. And now flights are at a standstill effectively, and anyone coming in will now have to undergo quarantine like international passengers will. And on top of that, other states like Queensland are barring people from New South Wales, from Victoria. So suddenly all these state borders are going up. Again, it's a strange development for Australia because state borders were really kind of an irrelevancy before this.
Jonathan, do stay safe down under, and thank you so much for coming on the show. That was the Australia correspondent for the Straits Times, Jonathan Pearlman.
Let's check in with Dylan Ang for more global headlines.
Good evening, I'm Dylan Ang. Let's take a look at the global headlines. A huge explosion rocked Beirut on Tuesday, killing scores and wounding thousands. Video footage of the blast showed an enormous orange fireball that dwarfed nearby buildings and sent a devastating shockwave through the city. Lebanon's health minister said that the death toll has risen to 78, with nearly 4,000 injured. The blast occurred in the port area. President Michel Aoun said that 2,750 tons of ammonium nitrate used in fertilizers and bombs had been stored for 6 years at the port without safety measures, and he said that was unacceptable. Allies and adversaries of Lebanon also paid tribute to victims, offering their condolences and help. Israel, which has fought several wars with Lebanon, is among the nations to offer humanitarian help. Aid has also been offered by Egypt, Kuwait, and the United States. The global death toll from COVID-19 has surpassed 700,000, according to a Reuters tally, with the United States, Brazil, India, and Mexico leading the rise in fatalities. Nearly 5,900 people are dying every 24 hours from the virus on average. That equates to 247 people per hour, or one person every 15 seconds. The Indonesian State Palace vowed compliance with health protocols yesterday, after President Joko Widodo and several ministers were seen without masks during a cabinet meeting on Monday. The photos posted on the Cabinet Secretariat's Twitter account were taken as ministers met to discuss the COVID-19 pandemic and the national economic recovery at Merdeka Palace in Jakarta. The Presidential Secretariat had responded to the online criticism, saying the President and the ministers had put the masks on and off during the meeting, as their voices were sometimes unclear with masks on. Fulham returned to the Premier League a year after relegation as two extra-time goals from full-back Joe Bryan gave them a 2-1 win over Brentford in the Championship Player Final at Wembley. The club joins Leeds United and West Bromwich Albion in getting promoted next season. In tennis, Novak Djokovic and Serena Williams are among players who have entered the US Open to be held in New York. However, crowd favourite and world number 2 Rafael Nadal will not defend his title and joins women's world number 1 Ash Barty in skipping the tournament due to coronavirus concerns. And those are the headlines around the world. It's back to you guys in the studio.
Thank you, Dylan. Now, Ollie, we're going to be working on National Day on Sunday, but I understand your kids are still going to be out celebrating. What have you got planned for them?
Well, I'm actually hoping that, we can go out to watch the fireworks at night. But in the morning, I'm hoping that also, they will be able to find time to go out along the streets in our neighborhood to catch the mobile column if it runs through, our place.
Yeah.
But of course, one of the highlights that I really hope they catch, even though I don't think they've been fans of this segment, but, the F-15 fighter jets, the aerial display, I hope they can catch that as well. Here's more on that.
This fighter jet bomb burst is a crowd favorite at every National Day parade. This year, the popular aerial display by the Republic of Singapore Air Force will soar to new heights for the nation's 55th birthday bash. For the first time, 6 RSAF F-15 fighter jets will fly over the heartlands in a delta formation. Dubbed the Roar of Unity, the 30-minute flypast will cover 170 nautical miles. It will begin at 10:45 AM at the Padang and end at 11:15 AM at Paya Lebar Air Base.
For previous years, our main focus was on at the show center, be it the floating platform or the Padang. However, for this year, Singaporeans will not be able to be at the show center to watch this segment. And we want to bring this to them at their homes. We want to ensure that the Singaporeans will be able to see, hear and feel the fighters overflying their homes.
The 6 pilots will fly at a height of 1,500 to 2,000 feet at a speed of close to 600 kilometers per hour. With unpredictable weather, limited airspace and just 2 to 3 meters between each plane, staying in formation comes with plenty of challenges.
This year's Roar of Unity is actually one of the longest that we have flown for NDP. Let me give this analogy. So imagine you are driving a car constantly looking in the same direction for 30 minutes at high speeds while trying to avoid not hitting your flight lead or wingman. That requires a lot of concentration and finesse to actually achieve that.
Come August 9th, be sure to look out your window for a chance to catch these fighter jets in action.
We are coming to you live from the Padang this Sunday morning to celebrate the nation's birthday.
Right in the heart of Sengkang,
Untitled Hospital,
Bukit Hospital,
live from Changi Airport.
the Red Lions are scheduled to arrive from the sky any moment now.
Singapore's 55th birthday is just days away now. Make time to celebrate with us on a very special NDP show that's coming to you live this Sunday, August 9th from 9:30 AM.
From the fighter jet flypasts to the special tributes to our frontline heroes, you can catch it all on our show, so be sure to join us.
You can also visit straitstimes.com for more news and videos, and of course subscribe to our YouTube channel by hitting the red button below.
Once again, I'm Haryanto Diman with Olivia Quay. Join us tomorrow for more stories on A Big Story.